these, these, virginal eyes on the Bible, if you know anyone, and I was that way too myself, but I wasn't Diane. But, oh man, what they see in the text, if they've never seen it before, and then what they say about it is just hysterical. I can still picture where she sat.
I was reading on into Genesis. I guess I'd never really noticed how much incest there is in the Bible.
Oh, it's a horrendous. It should be a banned book, right? It should be a banned book,
know.
right? If you
Does DeSantis know what's in the Bible?
he doesn't have that. I didn't get that
Why
impression.
isn't he banning that?
I don't get.
Well, I hate to say this, but he's Catholic,
And they don't
Oh,
study
stop.
the Old Testament.
and they don't read the Bible.
Come on, is he? Yeah.
I think he
Yeah,
is.
DeSantis is studying.
He's Italian.
Italian.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Ruth.
Yeah.
I know they don't
Okay.
read the Bible. I mean,
That's
like we
interesting.
do.
That's
I'm not
interesting,
saying they
Karen.
don't, but they don't read the
So I
Bible.
wish, well, he's Italian, and I
Yeah.
think I read somewhere he's Catholic. And,
Okay. But Biden's Catholic.
Oh, yeah.
He quotes the scriptures. I mean, appropriately, I think, right?
Yeah, well, he's,
Yeah, but
Where's
they
he
would
get it?
kick him out.
Well,
They didn't want him to go to communion.
well, I
when
guess
he
it's
first
more
got
of an
president.
individual choice then, because I was always interested in reading the Bible, and it was never offered in
It
Catholic
was never
church.
offered.
Well, one time it was offered, and I went,
Because there's some spectacular good Bible theologians. I've got. If you ever want to see them, Ray Brown, and there's a bunch of them that are fantastic that I use often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
what
don't know
I
how
remember
they-
most from that course
He says-
was that the priest said, it's always 40 days and 40 nights. He said that was just an expression, it meant a long time, it wasn't literal. It's like, I say, I've done that for 100 years,
Right, sure. Well, and by the way, it's not a historical story anyway.
Well, Lenny's mother lived here, she was Catholic, and we took care of her.
Whose
For
mother?
10 years, Lenny's mom, my husband's mom, my mother-in-law. And she didn't know any of the, I would be doing like little children's stories, Noah and the Ark, and
She didn't know.
barbecue for Ben, the building of the Tower of Babel, and she didn't know those stories because she had never read them in the Bible.
No, the
Yeah.
only thing a Catholics learn are the Gospels, basically.
But she loved the Bible before she passed away. She had worn out. She read it all the time. She's a great story.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we got a ways to go here today.
oh, yeah.
Look at me. Hey, Pat.
Ah, look at you. Did you get something that'll show up on the film?
Better pen.
No, that's next week. I'm going to improve slightly. You know how intimidating it is to have a teacher in your class?
Do you have a marker today? It gives you authority.
Well, we'll see about that. Can you see this?
No.
Good, okay. I don't know what to do. I've got a really good pen at home and I forgot to bring it. Big,
I
wide,
think
good one.
your secretary just went looking for some.
She's anticipating my every
I know,
thought. I've had a few of those over the years.
Not if there's anything in the kitchen, but if
I've
she's
looked in the kitchen, I want a big fat, well, this is, as you know, the midterm exam. I've locked the door. I would like it if, well, I'll tell you a little story first. Maybe you've heard this before. I know I'm repeating myself. When I was a student in seminary, at least where I went to school, and a number of seminaries behave like this, is your first year is horrendously difficult. You're learning Hebrew, you're learning Greek at the same time, you're reading really difficult theology, you're doing biblical studies, and then you got the other bells and whistles, little pastoral care and all that jazz. But you go home absolutely exhausted. And by the end of the year, you're really wondering, why you're doing this. And I was there as an, oh, look at you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That raise is on the way.
It's about time.
So,
Coffee, I take it in coffee.
there you go. In what they're doing, or what they did, is they're deconstructing the student. So almost everyone, except me, I guess, were brought up in the church, and they went through Sunday school, and they had confirmation, they did all the bells and whistles, and which is great, and it has a place, I think. But they're approaching all these different layers of study in a way that is directed to an adult. And so there has to be a movement for the student from being a nice church kid to being an adult theologian. And it wasn't always greeted with a lot of enthusiasm. And I remember one of my colleagues, and we have classes that are at the most 20 people. I can remember he put his fist down hard on the table, and he said, "You are taking away my Jesus." And he got up, and we never saw him again. And you don't want people to have that kind of eruption of faith, and I kind of wonder maybe he was on kind of shaky ground anyway. But I think one of the practices in terms of adult learning of any kind, whether you're a physicist, a theologian, a rank and file member of a church, what's in my mind is a trapeze, something on a trapeze, and that feeling of letting go of some of the things that you thought, one thinks, and then grabbing onto something new. That feeling, but it's that in-between, flying through the air kind of feel, that's really hard. And at least for me, the first year of seminary, and I think for my colleagues too, had that feeling we're letting go of things that we thought we knew and held in such a way that we knew, and the seminary is saying, well, we want you to grab for that other rung. And so by the end of the year, I was there as an academic. I was there, about a third of us were academics. We were going to teach in seminaries and universities and whatever. The other 2/3 were going to be pastors, but they muddled us all together. And so for the academics, I think it was a little bit easier to do that because we didn't have such a vested interest. I mean, we were all people of faith, but we didn't have that vested interest in feeling that what we knew, we are now going to impart on the next generation. You had to let go of that. That's really hard. It's really hard to do. But I think it's necessary in order to carry the weight of reality. One has to have a stronger faith than what you had when you were a kid. Right? Otherwise, you have this bifurcated life where, Sundays is like this, and we sing the hymns and all that. I'm glad we do. That's all great. But then Monday comes along, and one's faith or worldview cannot handle the weight of your reality. Am I making some sense? And in order to do that, then you have to, I'm not saying get rid of your faith. Some people do that. They just get rid of it. And I do not agree with that. I think that a human being, a Christian, needs to deepen their faith, have a more solid foundation in order to handle the ups and downs of our lives. That's been my goal for 36 years. That's what I'm hoping for. And some people like it, some people don't. And that's the way it is. You know, I've had plenty of parishioners who have said, "You're taking away my Jesus," or something along those lines. Sometimes it's just simply a hand gesture, which I've seen more than I would prefer as they left. So, anybody want to comment on that? One of the things that goes with this, of course, is uncertainty, and that's hard. It's hard if you have a faith that is like a castle with razor wire around it. You know, and you feel secure in that. You know, and then you have to commit a little bit of intellectual suicide on Monday in order to handle that, or to keep that vision. We all know people like that, right? Yeah, or you become like a Gumby, you know, they're all twisted up. You can go that way, I guess, or you can learn to live with ambiguity. And my feeling is that's another word for faith. You know, I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers, but we offer our hearts in faith, saying, God has the answers. Right? And we rest in that. Doesn't mean that we don't still try to, figure things out intellectually and in our hearts, but, that's the job, right? That making any sense? I'm retiring, so I feel like I'm a little freer to kind of say it. Not that I've been that shy anyway. But, okay, so that's that. So the trapeze of learning is kind of how I see it. I don't know if that's new or not, but it's new for me. And then the other thing I wanted to do just briefly, I wanted to ask you if we could have a decent list of what types of literature are in the Bible. What are we talking about? Thanks, Alice, for that. This is the exam portion of the. What kind of literature?
Mythic.
Mythic. And what's that?
Parable,
Parable. Great.
poetry.
Yeah, we're in your wheelhouse right now, Ruth. I know that. It's terrific.
Yeah, right.
Poetry?
History.
Keep going. Think St. Paul. What's that?
Letters.
Letters, okay. Epistles, letters, good.
Epistles.
Huh?
Epistles.
Epistles, it's kind of the letters,
Yeah, epistles, and letters. And by the way, when we read St. Paul's epistles, they are responses to letters he's got received, right? So you can kind of figure out, what were the questions that were brought to him. That's kind of a, whodunit, kind of a way to uncover what was going on in the life of that particular church, the Galatians, the Philippians, or the Filipinos, or that's what they're called. But no, it wasn't people from Philippians. But these are his responses to those churches. All right? There were probably buckets of them, and we only have a few to go by. All right? Anything else?
What was the second one?
Huh?
What was the second one?
Parable.
Parable.
Parable, to throw alongside. Parabole.
Okay.
To throw alongside. Play catch, in other words. Okay?
Prophecy, biography, something, prophecy.
Prophecy, good one. Sorry?
Biography.
Biography, okay.
Proverbs.
Proverbs, great. this, my writing style. Proverbs, are they promises or are they proverbs?
Proverbs.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You know, people read the Proverbs. There's a whole book in the Bible called Proverbs. And you'll find people that read those Proverbs as if they are promises. They are not promises. They're Proverbs. You see how you get mixed up? If you don't identify the literature, the kind of literature that's in front of you, including the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, anything that you're reading, or a person, if you're not linked into the writer and the style of writing, then you're going to make a mistake. So you see preachers up here, you know, who will say, well, these are the promises of God in Proverbs 3, verse 7, you know, it's blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not. It's not a promise. It's a proverb.
Isn't a proverb like a how-to, like a how to live your life?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Isn't that how we would handle a proverb elsewhere? When you, and I don't mean, don't take this too seriously, but when we open up a fortune cookie, there are proverbs in there. I mean, how seriously? I mean, is this the word of God coming to you through a cookie?
There are those who would think so.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, because they see it as a promise, right? You misread it. If you misread it, you can get yourself in some pretty deep water. We're gonna uncover something serious in a minute with this. And then there's teleology. I mean, you can go on and on, but I mean, these are the basics. What I've got is Revelation, teleology, end of times, end of time. And that has to be read as well with an eye to that specific kind of literature. So you'll see preachers, you know, doing a series on the book of Revelation, and you get all tied up because it's hard to read. Some people say it's like political cartoons, like Doonesbury. If you don't get it, they're like jokes that were written back then. If you don't know what the joke is, you don't know how to interpret it. So, right? I mean, it all makes horse sense, doesn't it, in a way? But there has to be a sensitivity and a dexterity with whatever literature you're looking at. And I'd add the New York Times to that, the Wall Street Journal. You've got to be a good reader. And then hopefully, somewhere down the line, you'll be a good reader of persons, and also a better reader, or a good reader of yourself. How do you read yourself? We were talking about that all morning. So how do you read it? How do you read the congregation? How do you read your community? Very, 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 it's essential. Otherwise, if you get it wrong, you're in trouble. You get in trouble. If you get it right, it feels good. Okay? All right, and then I want to just, for the midterm, isn't this fun with little paper? You like that? It's a pretty dynamic addition to my teaching style.
There'll be slides next.
Yeah, next week I'm going to use puppets. Puppets. We'll talk to each other. Puppets. This is laziness, basically. I know. So we got to... A Christocentric hermeneutic. We've talked about all this stuff before. It's our midterm. Anybody say something about what is a Christocentric hermeneutic?
Christ-centered.
Christ-centered?
Christ is the center. Like our church says, Christ is the head, the center.
Yeah, aren't we lucky that that's the case for our church? Yeah, yeah, blessed, lucky. I was raised by wolves. But if you can imagine, okay, you're sitting down reading the Bible, all right? You got another chair over here, and that's Jesus. Jesus Christ is next to you, helping you read the scripture. You can imagine that. And what this is that the controlling hermeneutic, the controlling glasses that you put on, it has to do with Jesus' life, teaching, death, and resurrection. That's what you're putting on. That's a Christocentric hermeneutic, like that. So how does this square, whatever you happen to be reading in the Bible, how does that square with the life, teaching, death, and resurrection of Jesus? If it doesn't square very well, then you could say a few things. Well, maybe it's not part of the Bible, so people say that. Or you can say, look, this is time sensitive. What we're reading is time sensitive. It may have been true that we're not going to eat pork in Leviticus, right? At the time of Leviticus, there was most probably a reason why they weren't eating pork. Trichinosis, right? And I can't get it to be, mine gets all dried out, and it's not, well, that's a different issue. That's a different matter. But yeah, trichinosis, and also pigs eat the same things that people do. And if you live in Texas or Florida, you know, they've got a tremendous problem with feral pigs, because it rips up, the pigs will rip up farmland, they rip up everything. So you can't have that animal in your midst in order to thrive for that reason and this reason. So you can't have pork. We don't want pigs anywhere around us right now. But does that square with the life, teaching, death, and resurrection of Jesus? No. So it's time sensitive, these things. Just like it is, my daughters would remind me, that stoning your daughter, we no longer do that, Dad. All right. I thought that wasn't time sensitive. But anyway, I guess it is. Do you see what I mean? Or I would drive my girls to school in the morning, and I got, Catherine, my eldest, she's 7, let's say, and I see her face in my rearview mirror, and she's got a really bad look on her face, really cranky. I don't take it personally because I don't make mistakes, so it must be about something else. So she's looking at me like this, like she's gonna give me a hand gesture. I said, Catherine, what is it? What is it? She goes, I know. I said, what do you know? She goes, you don't believe that Noah was a real person, do you? No, I don't. See? She got all huffy about it, and she was really bent out of shape that her father, the minister, did not believe Noah was a real person. She got pretty excited about it. I said, what do you think? She says, Noah is true. He's a real person. I said, well, it's okay to be wrong. One of them.
Great story.
It's a nice story, right? Yeah, there were several other versions of that over the years. So I said, well, when you're a more complex human being, you'll understand that. That went over big. Okay, so, all right, so you've all passed the midterm. Well done. Yeah, it's good to review. This is sort of the basement. We're kind of playing in the basement of the Bible. This is prolegomena, the word before the word, is what it is. A prologue of a book. You read the prologue, it kind of sets the stage so that you move into the book itself. That's what we've been doing. This is prolegomena, the word before the word. Okay? So what I want to look at, I want to go back a little bit because I want to talk a little bit about slavery today. And I want to take a look at 2 stories. One being the story of Noah, and one of his sons being Ham, H-A-M, speaking of trichinosis. and the other being the book of Exodus. The whole subject matter of slavery in this country is really, you see it everywhere, that discussion, and it's worthy of I think our time and our hearts to work through that and then maybe figure out what to do about it. But Christians in our country have read the Bible like what we're going to do, and they have used the Bible to substantiate slavery. And there have been counter stories of Christians in our country, and Jewish people as well, Jewish believers, who have countered the story and legitimacy of slavery. So shall we take a look at it and see if we can figure it out? Okay. Well, I'll give you a little. If I get this confused, just forgive me. But I'm looking at Genesis 10. Maybe. Genesis 9:20. Genesis 9:20. Now here, at this point in the story, Noah has been called to build the ark. The animals come onto the ark. Is this a historical story? No. It's a story of meaning for the entire human family. So don't go to Turkey and climb up Mount Ararat and try to look for gopher wood. So even if you find it, that's not what the story is about. We've got Noah building the ark. It rains for 40 days and 40 nights, and the waters recede. The animals come off of the ark, and Noah gets seriously drunk. Does that make sense? Anybody else could envision that? He's been through a real ordeal, and probably had a little drinking problem before it all started. So now he's naked in his tent, in his shelter, and totally intoxicated. And then this happens. 9:20. Let's see if I got that right. I hope so. Somebody want to read it? Through the end of the chapter.
Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk, and he lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers."
Keep going.
He also said, Blessed by the Lord my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave.
Okay. All right, that's good enough. Thanks, Karen. The issue of shame in the Middle East it's paramount to understand this. If you read the Psalms, King David's Psalms especially, the issue of shame comes up again and again and again. It is a really powerful word that's used throughout the Old Testament. Do not let me come to shame, O God, and on it goes. And so to be shamed is one of the worst things that a person can go through at that time and place. Is it much of an issue today?
Not as much.
Not as much, right? Not as much. Not as much. You don't, shame on you. You don't hear that much. When I was a kid, I heard it a few times, but probably wasn't listening. Yeah, it's not such a big issue here, but it's a huge issue in the Middle East. If you shame another person, and one of the ways to shame someone is to see him naked. So for instance, fast forward, when Jesus is crucified, he's naked. He doesn't have a little towel around himself. The Russians, not the Russians, excuse me. Yeah, the Russians wouldn't either. They love to shame their enemies, the Russians do. And, the Romans would not let that opportunity pass. An opportunity to really shame somebody. So they're going to put them up on a cross, buck naked, so everybody can see everything, and hang them. And it's a real, it's a crime and shame. So when you see Jesus on a cross, and for modesty, artists and sculptors have covered Jesus up. That was not the case with Jesus. So you can just imagine what the Roman soldiers were saying. You can imagine what the women were doing that day, if you can live into that a little bit. It was a horrendous experience of shame, death and shame. So, yeah, the Romans aren't going to let an opportunity like that pass. Or with anyone, not just Jesus, anyone. They're all put up on a pike, stark naked.
I'm curious, how is this known?
Well, the historical evidence of crucifixion with the Romans is pretty well established. How they did it. They didn't go through his hands either, by the way. They went through these bones, otherwise they'd rip his hands off, or rip them to pieces. There's a lot of historical material of how, right? So this
is separate stuff from the Bible.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And even the Bible's shy about it because the the Bible writers are also very sensitive about this stuff, right? They don't want to go there either. So even with Jesus's feet, there's a little, they put the nails through his feet, and there's a little bar there, we think. And the reason there's a bar there is because you die of asphyxiation with crucifixion. You don't bleed to death. You die of asphyxiation because you can't get your breath, because you start to get weaker and weaker, and you can't breathe. And what they would do is they would push off of that little bar, that little hunk of wood right here, to get your breath. And then you're exhausted, so you go back down, and you can't breathe anymore, and you got to push up. And that's why they break their legs, so they can no longer do that. Right? You know the story, right? They went around to break the legs of the two on either side of Jesus, and Jesus was already dead, so they didn't need to break his legs. Okay, so that's what's going on. Okay? This is all to say that shame is a huge matter. Abraham and Sarah, them not having children, brought a huge amount of shame onto them. The whole idea, the whole reality of barrenness is a huge theme through the Old Testament. It all has to do with shame. You must have done something terrible for God to bring this onto you. You must deserve it somehow. It's all shame-based. Shame-based. And what's different between shame and guilt is that shame you can't get rid of. You can't get rid of it. Whereas guilt, you can be forgiven. But shame has to do with who you are. And you can't get rid of it. You see what I mean? Shame and guilt. We dealt a lot with that at the hospital. You can't, well, this is kind of the homosexual issue. If this is a choice of yours, then you are guilty. If this is who you are, then you own the shame, and there's nothing you can do about it. With blacks, you have black skin. You are shamed, and there's not anything you can do about it. You can't take your skin off. So it's a in some ways we don't experience or hear a lot about shame, but we certainly do a lot of it through other means. You can see that, right? Even if you don't agree with it, it's what we do. Can a person who is a homosexual change their orientation? And a lot of people that say yes, they need to. It's an issue of volition, and so they can change and so on. Other people say no, it's a genetically based a preference. So anyway, I don't know where you come down on that, but I think that's the argument, right? Okay. So in this case, Noah's buck naked and drunk as a skunk in his tent, let's say, he's dwelling. Two of the boys won't look at him, right? They don't want to shame him. We're not looking. You got the picture? We're not going to look. We're going to toss my grandmother's fur coat over him. And we're good. Ham, or Canaan, doesn't do it. He sees them. And somehow Noah knows that he's seen him. And then what happens? When he wakes up out of his stupor, what does Noah do? Shall we look?
Curses him.
He curses Ham, right? And henceforth, not only Ham, but henceforth the generations that come after Ham are likewise cursed. And what does the curse look like? What did it say? Slaves. That's right. Ham and generations after him will always be slaves. And now Christians in this country, I'm not sure about other countries, but for sure this country, and you still hear it today. I do. That this is a justification for enslaving blacks, because it is said that blacks are descendants. Thank you. The descendants of Ham. That's how it works, right? Now we have just a minor reading problem here. This is why you have to read this stuff carefully. Who lays on the curse? Who does the cursing? Noah. Question: who gives a damn about Noah?
Ham, his sons.
Yeah, but God isn't the one that curses Ham. You see where I'm going with this? What business is it of Noah to curse another person? Answer: no business. You see where I'm going with this? Noah doesn't have any business cursing anyone. God's not cursing him. Shouldn't a curse be the prerogative of God only? I think so. So the whole argument falls apart. It just falls apart. Noah has no business doing what he's doing. Noah should be the one punished for doing that. Maybe if he went to AA and went through the 12 steps, he would get there to having a fearless moral inventory, because he would have his sponsor say, we got a little problem with that over here with what you did with Ham. So you, Noah, need to go to Ham and make a restitution. That's where the story has to go. There's a huge hiccup in this story. Only God can curse. It is not the prerogative of human beings to do it. So those that, Bible thumpers, who will go to this sort of, they make an incredible jump anyway to say Ham is a black person. That's a problem in and of itself. But at its core, this story tells us that Noah has no business cursing anyone, including Ham. Something for you to consider. But does the argument make sense? My argument makes sense? Okay. I don't hear this argument. I don't know if I've ever heard that argument before. They always dispute something, or they say it's time sensitive or something. I think the whole thing is just a horrendous story about Noah. Maybe he's a raging alcoholic. I don't know. Maybe it's not the first time. Does Jesus ever curse anything? Big tree.
Doesn't even really tell you how he knew if he was drunk and asleep. I
That's
didn't
right.
even know
That's
how
right.
get in.
And again, this is not history. This is not history, right? This is right. So we're trying to, once we read the story carefully, right? The close reading of the text, we call that. Then we're going to step back and say, okay, it's mythic in nature. What is it trying to tell the human family? What is this story about? What is it about this story that's about us? To my mind, Ham did the right thing. Okay, he's going to look, but he's going to cover Noah.
He didn't cover it.
Well, the boys did. But so do you picture him just standing there gawking at Noah? Maybe he did. Maybe he did. Doesn't say. But that's a good corrective.
So meanwhile, we have this huge list of descendants from Noah.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a mixture of myth and history, or?
Whenever you see, that's a good question. Whenever you see a genealogy in the Bible, and there's bunches of them, in the Old Testament and New Testament, like the Gospels, for instance, they have in Matthew and Luke, for instance. That is a literary signal that the story is going to change. It's going to move now. We're going to move. We've got the genealogy, and now we're going to move it. And a genealogy in the New Testament serves as saying, okay, we've got the Old Testament, now we're going to move it to the story of Jesus. You see, it's a literary device used throughout the Bible. So when you see a genealogy, for instance, the genealogies, if you know these characters well enough, and I don't pretend to, but the genealogies themselves will tell you a little bit about how the writer feels about this little family. The genealogies of Jesus are some of the characters in those, right? If you know them. Some of the genealogies in the Gospels are pretty provocative. They've added this person, that person. They shouldn't be there. We should be ashamed of this person, but they're there. So back in the day when those were being written, it wouldn't be unusual to hear a few chuckles when these genealogies are written. Okay, well that's Ham, all right? And you can consider that to see whether or not that's useful or true or whatever, but that's where Tom Pete's coming from.
There's something about this that, to me, I'm wondering, because we talk about slavery as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And this sounds like it is slavery as we know it.
Yeah.
So that saying slavery was in that time.
Well, it's a sliding scale, Helen. It's a sliding scale. You can go from, I mean, there was no slavery like the slavery in the United States. We were the best at it in the history of humankind, as far as we know. China can compete with us a little bit. Other places can compete.
India.
But India, right, with the caste system and so on. But no one can beat the United States as far as the brutality of slavery in any country. I mean, the Germans sent people over to figure out how to do it to Jews, and they came back and they said, hey, we can't do that. We can't go that far. Did you know that? They did eventually, but when they first wanted to control the Jewish population in Germany and then elsewhere, they went to the United States to learn how to do it physically, through laws, and so on. And they came back and said, we can't go there. We can't go that far. It's horrendous, isn't it? It's horrendous to know that. It's so embarrassing to talk about shame.
What racist people? I'm sorry, I didn't mean, but.
I just wanted to say there's a sliding scale of what is slavery or servanthood, right? Because St. Paul will use that word too a lot. Slave, servanthood, kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, are they the same?
No,
No,
No.
servanthood is more like a person now who works for a very rich person and gets
right.
paid.
It's Peter Gay. He's got kids over from Bard College, and he puts them up for it, and they play, and
But slavery, as we know it, is violence and wickedness and hatred and.
It's controlling a person or persons or a group through violence or the threat of violence. Right, exactly. So, and that's Exodus. Can we go there now? I think we can cover Exodus in 12 minutes. Anything?
Yeah.
All right, the book of Exodus has it's like a dance. It's got 3 steps to it. One is the kind of slavery that the people of God, the Hebrews, went through, what they did, and how they lived. Can anybody just give us a thumbnail sketch of what their lives were like when they were there? This is after Joseph, the new kings, the new pharaohs, didn't know Joseph, right, and what he had done. So they needed free labor. It's like going to what's this fantastic city in the Middle East now? They've got this incredible tall tower. Where is it? Dubai. Yeah, Dubai is just like this. It's not slave labor, but it's pretty much slave labor to build everything. Anyway, so how are things going on in Egypt with the Hebrews, with God's people? What were they doing?
They were free laborers, they were segregated, and they couldn't leave.
They couldn't leave. Free labor, building pyramids, these huge granaries that were built at this time. Were they given any remuneration at all?
No.
None. So there was no upside, all downside, right? And they got to the point where, some pharaohs are meaner than others. And one of them said, all right, more bricks, less straw. You're going to work with we want more bricks from you, but we're going to give you less straw. So they also, the Hebrews, had to go out and get their own straw to make the bricks. What a pain, right? So productivity had to go up, and so on. And how long were they in this condition?
400 years.
400 years. Sound familiar? 400 years. Okay. All right, so we've got that horrendous situation. And then what happens? What happens after 400 years? Who shows up?
Moses.
Moses, and tell us a little bit about Moses. What's going on there? He comes from Fruitland Township, like I do.
He was born into slavery.
Right, he was born into
Mother-
slavery.
Mother abandoned him, surrendered him, abandoned him in the river, and the Pharaoh's daughter found him.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, the Pharaoh was paranoid, as most pharaohs are, and he saw that they were increasing, even though their labor was impossible. Their population was growing, and he gets paranoid. These guys are gonna overthrow us. We had the same situation in the South with slaves, right? Same. There's a lot of parallels here. And so we got to kill some of these kids off, right? And he took the Pharaoh took a page out of Idi Amin's book and decided to pitch, kids into the Nile River, and there happens to be crocodiles there, and other ingenious methods of killing people. We're good at this, we're great at killing people, as we've been reminded every day in the news. This mom is going to save this kid somehow, right? So put him in a basket, put some pitch on it, send him out into the Nile, and hope for the best. And sure enough, who's out there?
I don't know, the Pharaoh's daughter. I thought it was someone else.
Yeah, Pharaoh's daughter hears this crying kid, and it's one of the Hebrew kids. She's got a heart. We're going to save this kid. So he grows up as a royal person. Yeah. And then he sees, right? He goes out and he sees all this, witnesses it. Jewish Hebrew men getting whipped and abused and all that, and he snaps.
But didn't he learn that he was one of them?
He-
That's why.
I would imagine he would, because he's circumcised. So several times a day he looks down and he says, "There's something different about me."
He knew that he originally he belonged with them.
Yes, yeah. So it's a strange situation. So he sees this Hebrew guy getting whipped, and he snaps. And what does he do?
Kill somebody.
He kills that Egyptian. Yeah. And now what?
He's on the run.
He's on the run. He's on the run. Yeah. While he's on the run, he's at a well. He winds up in a little village at a well. Well stories are very important in the Bible. They will give you a snapshot of what that person is all about. Well stories. Jesus has a well story. There are a number of well stories in the Bible, and that's also a little literary device to say, look, if you want to know about Moses, check out the well story, and you'll find out, really, you'll uncover the heart of Moses. And what does he do at the well? Bikers show up at the well, and they're hassling the girls. And Moses takes care of business. He protects and frees those girls from these guys. And they bring the girls bring the story home to, what's his name?
Garrett.
What's his name?
Garrett? Moses' brother?
No, it's the father of these girls. What's his name? I can't remember now. It'll come to me later tonight. So anyway, they tell the story. He marries one of the girls, and he's all set, right? He's escaped. He's safe. He's good. He's out of there. And then what happens? He's tending the sheep, right? One gets lost. He's a shepherd. Interesting, right? He's a shepherd. So he's up there picking around, and he goes into this cave, and what does he encounter?
Rule. He thought it was rule.
Rule. R-U-U-A.
R-E-U-E-L.
R-U-E.
R-E-U.
E-L, thank you. So he's out there in the, you know, the, I don't know, wilderness, but he's out there, you know, picking around in the hills. And he sees what? Burning bush, right? Okay. And the bush is burning, but it's not consumed, they say. And it starts talking to him. This is a prelude to Pine Rest Christian Hospital, where I've met a number of Moseses over the years. But no, so he has a natural reaction to this. And what is the voice telling him to do? We're almost done. What does the voice tell him to do? Go back. Great news, Moses. All that you've seen and have been running from, hiding from. Go back, you're my man. And you are going to go to Pharaoh, who he knows this person, right? He knows all these people. You're going to go back to these people that have raised you, and you are going to demand that they free your people, right? And then Moses goes, you know, you got a name? You know, when they're going to ask me, the Pharaoh's going to ask me, well, who sent you? Big shot. Who shall I say sent me? And what is the response?
I am who I am.
I am who I am, Yahweh. And it's the first time Yahweh is spoken. It's kind of a nickname, really. It's not a formal name. Yahweh. It's kind of a nickname. And it means I am who I am. And like all things in Hebrew, if you change the jot and the tittles, have you heard that before? Mm-hmm. Jot and tittles, that's Hebrew. If you change the jot and the tittles a little bit, those are the vowels. There are no vowels in Hebrew. You know that, right? All the vowels have been added later. Amy would know this. All the jot and tittles are added later. They are the vowels. And like anything, I could be Tom, I could be Tim, I could be Tum. However you're going to, whatever you decide that vowel is going to be, it is going to change slightly or dramatically that name. So traditionally, I am who I am, Yahweh, is the traditional name of God, which is not spoken by Jewish people, by the way. You don't say the name of God, ever. But Yahweh is traditionally how we translate that. I am who I am. You change a couple jot and tittles, and it becomes, I will be what I will be. Change a few more, and it'll be read, I will be everything you need me to be. Change a few more, and it reads, I am none of your business, which is my personal favorite, as I'm sure you know that by now. I am none of your business sent me. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what Pharaoh? I mean, it's just horrendous. You got the scene. Moses is coming in. He's going to confront Pharaoh. He's going to say, let my people go. Well, who sent you? None of your business sent me. Fabulous. Just love that. New Jersey, it plays better in New Jersey. So then, of course, it goes perfectly to plan. Pharaoh agrees, lets the people go. This is fabulous. They embrace, and off they go, right? No, it goes horribly. And we'll talk about that next week as far as how important is leadership to justice. And we're going to find out next week when the Pharaoh decides not for justice, all hell breaks loose. And that is true for all leadership. You don't have a leader that has a sense of justice and fairness, you can count on all hell breaking loose. And we're going to see it next week, okay? All right? Go forth with God.
He's excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm wrapping my head around slavery now.
Well, it's worthy of your, it's, as a Christian, it is worthy of your study, and it will, I